Hey everyone, just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, we would really appreciate it if you left us a review and shared these episodes with a friend. We really appreciate your support in helping us to grow this podcast. And with that, let's get started with this week's episode. Many are familiar with the classic Christmas carol, "I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day," but not nearly as many know the story of its origin. Prior to its recording by artists like Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Burl Ives, Johnny Cash, and Casting Crowns, it was a poem written by America's greatest poet, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Originally entitled Christmas Bells, Longfellow did not write this poem as a simple passing fancy. This was written in a time of intense grief for Longfellow, both on a personal and a national level. This is a story which has touched me for a number of years, and I hope it has a similar impact on you as well. This is the story of Henry's Bells, an American Christmas carol. Henry's eyes slowly opened upon the cold gray light of dawn. He was fully awake from the moment his eyes opened, but he was in no hurry to rise. After a few minutes of staring at the golden curtain ring which hung from the ceiling above his head, he slowly swung his feet to the floor and stood. He ran his fingers through the wild mass of white hair which adorned his head and face. It was time to begin the day. He walked down the hallway past Charlie's room and gazed in at his son, who slept soundly despite his injury of a year ago. Henry shuddered at the reminder of the pain which his eldest son had endured. "Merry Christmas, Charlie," he whispered, before moving on down the hall. The ghostly rays of early morning greeted Henry as he entered his study. He walked slowly to the desk which served as his usual station in the early morning hours. This desk, which had once served as the writing desk for General George Washington when he occupied this house in the early years of the American Revolution, had now served as the writing station for the most famous poet in America for the past 2 decades. Staring at the pen and paper before him, he reflected upon his present condition and the state of the world around him. Henry was a haunted man. Yet it wasn't the same ghosts which met Ebenezer in his dear friend Mr. Dickens's tale. He was instead haunted by personal grief and the ever-present conflict which engulfed his beloved country. Even at that moment, he could hear the rattling of chains in his aging ears. Rather than the chains of Marley, these were the chains of thousands of enslaved souls throughout the American South. Their cries for freedom could only be drowned out in his mind by his own inner groaning. This internal grief came daily and would never fully leave him for the rest of his days. For it was in this room 3.5 years before that his dear wife, Fanny, had run to him, her face the picture of terror and her body engulfed in flames. Her dress had somehow caught on fire while she was melting wax for the purpose of sealing envelopes. Henry had been dozing in his study when the blaze began. She had run to him immediately, and he had attempted to smother the flames, first in an embrace which badly burned his face and hands, and then with a rug that was nearby. The fire was put out too late, though. The damage had been done. Fanny held on for just one more day, passing away the following day at the age of 44. Her funeral, which Henry had not been able to attend due to his injuries, was on July 13th, 1861, the couple's 18th wedding anniversary. His grief had been inexpressible. Their love had been genuine and rich. Fanny had once written of her love for her husband by stating, "How completely my life is bound up in his love. How broken and incomplete when he is absent a moment. What infinite peace and fullness when he is present. And he loves me to the uttermost desire of my heart." Their love had led to 5 beautiful children and a home filled with endless joy. Fellow poet Oliver Wendell Holmes once pointed to the Longfellow home and expressed to a friend, "Those who live there have their happiness so perfect." Oh, how he had loved Fanny, and oh, how empty he had felt for over 3 years now. He had teetered on the edge of madness for a time, and no one would have blamed him had he lost his mind. In the midst of his grief, he had written a letter to Fanny's sister, Mary, expressing, "How I am alive after what my eyes have seen, I know not. I am at least patient, if not resigned, and thank God hourly, as I have from the beginning, for the beautiful life we led together, and that I loved her more and more to the end. My heart aches and bleeds sorely for the poor children. To lose such a mother and all the divine influences of her character and care. They do not know their loss, but I do. God will provide. His will be done." Despite his agony, Henry trusted that God had a perfect plan and was still in control of all things. Yet his grief was still a daily battle. Christmas had become an especially difficult day. It was precisely 2 years ago, on Christmas Day, 1862, that he wrote, "A Merry Christmas, say the children, but that is no more for me." And now, on Christmas Day, 1864, his grief still clung on tightly. His hands and whiskered face still bore the scars from that unforgettable tragedy. He picked up his pen with the intention of beginning his work, but the pen dropped from his trembling hand as tears began to rise in his eyes. The thudding of his broken heart seemed to him like the sound of far-off cannon fire. Between the war which raged within his soul and within his nation, he did not know how much more he could bear. Placing his head in his scarred hands, he heard a distinct sound. The ringing of church bells. The crisp December air of Cambridge, Massachusetts, carried the familiar sound well. The ringing of the bells had an angelic quality about it, reminding him of the message to the shepherds on that first Christmas night. Peace on earth, goodwill to men. This thought gave him pause. The grief he felt and the hatred within the hearts of men seemed to mock the song of the bells. Peace on earth? There was certainly none of that to be found wherever he looked. What sort of peace on earth would allow Fanny, that one who seemed to him to be the purest of God's creation, to perish in fire before his eyes as he attempted to extinguish the flames? And now he alone was left to raise their 5 children. And was there peace to be found outside his personal tragedies? To his west and south, a brutal civil war had just concluded its 4th bloody year, with the death toll rising into the hundreds of thousands. Every day, boys like his own Charlie were being cut down by their fellow countrymen. Brother went to war against brother, and father against son. Those that avoided death or dismemberment on the battlefield stood a high chance of succumbing to disease or infection in a field hospital. His own son had almost been taken from him twice now. Although Henry had forbidden his eldest son from enlisting, the sense of duty was too strong within the 17-year-old Charlie. His first brush with death involved a bout of what the doctors had called camp fever, perhaps typhoid fever, and the other a Confederate bullet which had gone through both shoulders and nicked his spine. The tears flowed freely as Henry was reminded of the fears he had experienced, that Charlie might never walk again, or that he may even perish. "There is no peace on earth," he said aloud. And what about goodwill? Where was goodwill when an entire race of poor souls remained in forced servitude, despite Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation of nearly a year before? The chains were still rattling. The bullets were still flying. The widows and orphans were growing in number by the day. How could this be? His next thought chilled him to his core. An outside observer looking at such carnage might be tempted to conclude that God was dead, or at least in a deep sleep. In a moment of intense despair, his head sank lower and lower, almost touching the desk beneath him. His sobs seemed to come from the depths of his soul. All at once, the sobs ceased as his ears were once more filled with the ringing of the bells. Yet this time, their chorus sounded with more intensity. Their ringing resonated within the very depths of his being, and he found himself suddenly filled with something he once thought was long gone: hope. The bell's message was clearer to him than ever before. The words rang from his mouth in tandem with the bells. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. The resolve that Henry Wadsworth Longfellow felt in that moment caused him to once more lift the pen into his hand and begin to write. The words flowed freely from his soul and onto the page. Once finished, he softly placed the pen back onto his desk and closed his eyes, listening as the bells completed their song. There, on the desk in front of him, lay his completed poem, which he entitled Christmas Bells. It read, "I heard the bells on Christmas Day their old, familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men, and thought how, as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men, till ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from night to day, a voice, a chime, a chant sublime of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then from each black, accursed mouth, the cannon thundered in the south, and with the sound the carols drowned of peace on earth, goodwill to men. It was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent, and made forlorn the households born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. When we reflect on the story of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's writing of Christmas Bells, certain elements of it ring true in our modern day. At times, everywhere we look seems to be filled with mankind's hatred toward one another. The explosions of warfare around the globe, terror attacks on the innocent, and vile expressions of malice fill up our news feeds and television screens. Suffering abounds. Many of us also may be dealing with personal tragedy this Christmas. Perhaps an empty chair at the family gathering feels heavier than we can bear. Maybe, like Henry, we have found ourselves teetering on the edge of madness in the face of these things. And we may find ourselves, like Henry, asking in this Christmas season, Where is peace on earth and goodwill toward men? But just like on that cold December Massachusetts morning of 1864, the bells are still ringing. They ring with an eternal message of hope. Their ringing penetrates the deepest darkness and hardest of hearts. This everlasting ringing is the greatest gift ever given, and no amount of human hatred or suffering can quiet its song. This ringing, this gift, cries out, Emmanuel, God with us. There is hope. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Christ is this light, and His gospel is the source of our hope. Despite the suffering and sin which surrounds us, Christ offers us everlasting joy in His presence. He calls us today to repent and believe in the gospel, accepting this gift which He graciously offers us. Do not yield to the darkness and descend into the madness of hatred. He Himself is no stranger to suffering. For God so loved the world, He gave His one and only Son to be sacrificed upon a Roman cross for His glory and for our good, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have eternal life. What better time than Christmas to run to Him in faith, in hope, and in love, trusting Him with all that we have and all that we are. It is only then that we can genuinely and faithfully say, as Henry wrote, God will provide. His will be done. The darkness may mock the song of the bells, may scoff at the message of the gospel and our firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. But have courage this Christmas, and every day thereafter. For the wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men.